All right, so let's go with what Dre was talking about there. Does Klay Thompson's injury derail where the Warriors were going, both next year and let's look a couple years out?
I think short term, absolutely. I don't know how they could win at this level next year. Even if Klay comes back in February or March, he's not going to be the same player next season. It's going to take him time to work himself back into game shape, get his rhythm back, and you can't do that in high-pressure type of situations. Long term, I think the biggest question I have long-term has nothing to do with Klay, who I think they're going to max out in a long-term contract. I think they'll offer Kevin Durant a long-term contract. He won't take it, but I think they'll offer it to him. The question I have is with Draymond Green. And what do you do with him at this point? Because next year, it's kind of a wash. Like, wherever you finish, it's not going to be with a trophy at the end of the season. And then you've got Draymond Green in 2020 entering free agency. And Draymond Green, for all his talents right now, is something of a depreciating asset. He's a guy that is still an elite defender against fours, but is not the same as he was against threes and some fives. He's just slowly declining, not at a high level, but slowly declining defensively every single year. Offensively, we have seen his numbers from three-point range go completely downhill. And those aren't the kind of things that, generally speaking, improve as you get a little bit older. So if you're looking at Draymond Green this offseason, this might be an opportunity for the Warriors to turn around and try to trade him for multiple pieces that make sense around Klay and around Steph for the long term. If you can get 2 or 3 pieces for Draymond Green and then you start looking at 2020 and beyond, that to me is something that has to be considered.
So I think it absolutely is something that has to be considered. I do not know the team around the league that looks at Draymond Green and says 1 year of him, because that's all that's left on his contract, at nearly $20 million is worth multiple rotation NBA players. He is amazingly valuable for this team in this system with those two guys, with Steph and Klay, playing with him. His value on a bad team is non-existent. His value on a good team, you better have a ton of shooting. Like, so who are the teams that fit in that little Goldilocks zone of they're good enough to need him, they wouldn't mind taking a risk on a 1-year rental on him, and they have the assets to make the Warriors better. I thought you were going to say you max out Klay this summer and then Draymond potentially walks in a year and you use that, you finally have some cap space. That, to me, I think is a plausible reality they could be facing a year from now.
But even if you sell Draymond low and get 60 cents on the dollar, and you can get maybe a draft pick back in return, if you're going to let him walk anyway, which I think is something that has to be considered as well, because giving him a 4-year full max, that's tough when he's going to be in his mid-30s when that contract comes up. I mean, you have to make hard decisions in this league. And Draymond has been the heart and soul of a 3-time NBA champion, but just you don't pay for past performance. You've got to look at this, you know, practically, and giving him that kind of money is a lot. So I would think about, even if you're not getting dollar-for-dollar value, I would think about trying to get a draft pick and maybe one young player back in return for a Draymond Green.
And Nick, how old is Draymond now?
He will be 30 by the early next season.
Yeah, his next contract will be in his 30s.
And how old is Klay?
Klay will be 30 the next time we see him play basketball.
Okay, I'm just going to tell you, all 30s aren't equal. Klay has the type of body that I believe will respond, and he's going to have a long career. He is not a smaller guard. Smaller guards, they don't age well. But Draymond is not a great athlete. Draymond was never a high recruit. He was never one of the elite players in college. He is a system player. And as you could see, when they don't have as much shooting or spacing around the court, Draymond Green in last night's game, 8 turnovers. In 4 of the finals games, he had 5 turnovers. All right, so that was one of the reasons why. So even though he did make a tremendous comeback after Kevin Durant, you could see that him leading the break, you could see him adding things to their offense. But, man, when you move Kevin Durant off that team, Draymond Green, like, I'm with you. He's not going to get better than what he is. You can't max him out. I would have him on the team next year and have him hit free agency in 20, because that's what's best. If they max out Draymond, they are limited as far as Steph and what he can do the rest of his career.
But why not then try to get 50 cents on the dollar for him?
Because you're saying next year's a lost cause anyway.
I think next year's a lost cause anyway.
I believe next year, because I just believe that what's happened in the last 5 days in the NBA, I believe not only athletics, but it's going to change the NBA. Klay, when I come back next year, I'm a 4th or a 5th seed. how fast do I rush back to get on the court? See, I want to start talking to players and see. We watched Kevin Durant go down. We saw Klay go down and the overall effect. We heard players like Aaron Rodgers talking about it, Tiger Woods talking about it. Like, it's going to be a part. How much am I going to put myself out there to jeopardize my career, risking injury?
And while I think most NBA fans understandably hate these two words, load management, we just saw the Finals MVP only play 60 games in the regular season because he was pacing himself. And we saw a team that had been to 4 straight NBA Finals, 4 straight 100-game seasons. Everybody gets hurt because they weren't able to pace themselves. Go ahead, Steve.
And NBA coaches, watch the NBA playoffs. Be careful who you try to put 40 minutes on. There's one LeBron James our whole career. There's been one Michael Jordan. The rest of those guys, they can't take that type of load on their body in the playoffs. We have seen guys. Kevin Durant, I believe part of the overall thing was they started playing him 40 minutes. Kevin Durant don't have the
3 minutes.
They don't have the body to play 40 minutes a game, and we started seeing other guys get forced into that. To me, I like to see that trend going down compared to going up, Cris.
I agree with you, but Nick, I think if you lower the price on Draymond Green, the market becomes robust for a guy like that. I mean, look, take like Oklahoma City for an example, like a team that's desperate to win right now. You plug Draymond Green into that group, and you trade one of your young pieces and maybe a future draft pick. You have got high-intensity players in Russell Westbrook and Draymond Green.
Oh, I'm not trying to say it's no value. If we're talking about...
Now, that was a great example you pulled right there, too.
If you're talking, if we are now saying a rotation player and a draft pick, I totally agree. The idea that
issues with multiple...
If you're going to get multiple guys that are going to come in and make an impact on your team. But just one other thing you said in the very beginning that I want to revisit quickly. You said they're max out Klay Thompson. It felt to me like Klay's representation was a little nervous that they were going to max him out before this injury. Remember, the reports are if they don't offer him a full max, he will look around. That, to me, was a warning shot by the agent. You're fully confident that with Klay Thompson now tearing his ACL, they're going to offer him the full max?
I'm not fully confident about anything at this point, but it just feels like Joe Lacob going into that new building is not going to want to nickel and dime.
It would be a
Klay
bad
Thompson.
look.
It really would. Like, to see a guy. I mean, if you let Kevin Durant walk, I mean, Kevin Durant to that team has been kind of a mercenary over the last few years. It's different. Klay Thompson is interwoven into the fabric of that team. Being cheap with him coming off after what he did, Game 6 Klay and this type of thing, almost leading them back to the brink of winning another championship. It would be a terrible look if they went that way with Klay.
Let's talk about Steve Kerr and how he fits into the future of the Warriors' plans here. How good of a coach is he? Do you think he'll be back next year?
Nick brought this up during the break. I didn't even consider that Steve Kerr might not be back because even when he was going through all the back issues, you never got the sense that he was done. He was just going to find his way back onto the floor to coach that team. It would also be a pretty bad look for Steve Kerr, unless the medical issues are so prohibitive. He's dealing with more than we know right now. To walk away from Steph Curry and to walk away from Klay Thompson when this team is in this current position, I just don't see it. Plus, everything I know about Steve Kerr, he loves to coach.
He loves to coach. And to answer the first part of your question, how good of a coach is he? A Hall of Famer, great coach. He has all this talent, man. This team that went to the 2 NBA Finals, won 140 games in 2 regular seasons, was there under Mark Jackson. They were good, not great. He unlocked them. There's 2 reasons I think it's something to watch. One is because of the constant pain and at times agony he is in because of his back. The other one is something Cris mentioned yesterday. What is the real truth and post-mortem going to be on what happened with Kevin Durant? And who in that organization is going to be held to account? Not that Steve Kerr would be held to account in that regard, but who also internally feels terribly about that? And whether or not that has soured anyone on moving forward, especially what will now be 5 years where you know you're going to the playoffs, you're probably going to the finals, and now you're scraping to try to get to 44 wins in the 7 seed. It's different situations. So I just think it's something to monitor about how enjoyable it would be for Steve Kerr next season.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.